I own my own little publishing.
I can talk about this all the time.
Yes, let's.
I need to go to bed at midnight. We've got 5 hours.
The longest podcast we've done.
That's a joke.
The longest one we've done so far is 4 hours 10 minutes. John Wedge is like, I got my record. All right, so in this modern era of the internet and technology, I've got my own little publishing company, and I can facilitate that, through files and stuff. We're going back now almost 100 years when technology was a lot different. It must have been quite cumbersome, though, even though he's got this connection and he sees these scientific documents, to then build a publishing company in that era. Isn't that a lot of hard work?
Not really, because the German publishers, had done it before. So what happens is when the Nazis come along in 1933, everything becomes a national state secret and they close it down. But before, when in the Weimar Germany, when they had proper German publications, and it would be the German. I'm making this up, but you get the flavour of it. The German magazine of metallurgy. German magazines, periodicals really on chemistry. We can do this. This is a clever way of making synthetic rubber, and suddenly that's worth money, and all the big universities in the West want to buy a copy. So it was he saw it. It was a license to print money. He wasn't a genius, because the guys who wanted to do that knocked on the door. But I'm not doubting for a second, Sean, that he was a great entrepreneur, and he had a tremendous memory. It was eidetic, I think is the clever phrase for it. I'm not quite sure what it means, but it's something like it's photographic, and he could also, he's British, although actually he's originally Czech, but he's pretending to be posh British. He's working with Germans, and he's making money. Then he works out that the next hidden market after Germany rises, but still he's got his magazines and periodicals. He never loses that for a long, long time. He then starts going in and trading with the Soviet bloc as well, which is another difficult area. And people are going, well, what's he doing over there? Now, part of it is because he's from there. Part of it is because he speaks the language. He affects throughout his life to being a socialist, though actually he behaves like a kind of monster capitalist the whole way through, in the way he deals with his own family, with people, his employers, all that stuff. So he's a blazing hypocrite, which is the kind of person who actually went down well, the Ceausescu's of this world. His problem is that after 1989 and the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of Soviet Eastern Europe, his old fishing grounds had closed down. They were onto new things, and so he was a kind of a beast from another time, kind of like a polar bear, but the ice cap was melting, and he made a series of mistakes. The big one was he wanted to best Murdoch. He wanted to be a big publisher in the States, and he went in and bought stuff in the States, the Macmillan Airline Guide, which was a silly bet he made, and basically he paid $1 million more. Then there was a financial crash, 91, and suddenly he couldn't run his business, and what he started doing was robbing Peter to pay Paul. Now, in his mind, it didn't matter. But he became, his share price kept on going down and down and down, and then he started raiding his workers' pension funds. And at one point, Gilem, according to Tom Bauer, has written the definitive book about Robert Maxwell. A year before he dies, it's the 5th of November 1990, she flies Concorde, goes to New York, meets a lawyer who gives her paper representing shares with Berlitz Language School, which is worth $200 million, and that belongs to one of his publicly quoted companies on the London Stock Exchange. She flies back. I think she parties in New York, then flies back the next day, and gives it to Robert. and then Robert puts it in one of his private companies. So what's happened is he's just stolen $200 million from the shareholders in his publicly quoted company. And he kept on doing that again and again and again, but he couldn't keep up. And then then we get to the place where in October 1991, he goes on his yacht. Now it's called the Lady Ghislaine, after his little daughter who he loved the most. After his daughter, who's currently in prison in New York. She denies the 6 charges she's facing, but she's rotting in hell in an awful prison cell. So the question you've got to ask is Robert Maxwell the man who ended up deforming this poor woman? So that's how she ended up in this awful place she's in.
I think there's definitely a role there, but there are some complexities. And one of the reoccurring themes throughout Maxwell's life, and Epstein as well, is the role of the intelligence agencies. So Maxwell, he'd go to Russia, sit down with the president of over there and the intelligence agencies, launder his money through Bulgaria, in with the Bulgarian intelligence agencies, come back to the UK, give information to MI5, MI6, CIA, and then go over to Israel and give information to Israel. There was just so many involved.
There were, but my view, I'm skeptical about how this nets out, but there's a time thing going on here as well, Sean. There's some gossip that, remember, he's Czech, and the Czechs have got a big arms industry, which, unlike the German arms industry, wasn't destroyed entirely during the war.